All right. This next panel is one of our most important panels today because it focuses in on the relationships between Alaska Native organizations and academic organizations. This panel is moderated by Dr. Charlene Stern, which you'll notice is a slight change from our printed agenda. For other updates, you can just scan the QR code and you'll be given the most recent agenda. Dr. Charlene Haizu Stern is Gwich'in and Athabascan from Arctic Village. She is an enrolled member of the Native Village of Venati Tribal Government. Dr. Stern serves as Vice Chancellor for Rural Community and Native Education at UAF. Prior to assuming that role, she taught as faculty within the Department of Alaska Native Studies and Rural Development since 2014.
Okay, thank you, Tia, and welcome to our last panel of the day, partnering between Alaska Native organizations and academic institutions. We have 4 panelists. One of them is going to be joining virtually, so I want to welcome our panel, and I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce them. So first, we have Dr. Sharon Lind. She is an assistant professor of management at UAA's College of Business and Public Policy. Dr. Lind's area of study and teaching is Alaska Native Business Management, where she created a minor focused on Alaska Native corporations. Dr. Lind was born and raised in Kenai to Bob and Angela Gunther. So thank you, Sharon, for joining us. And then next we have Dr. Barb Amarok. Dr. Amarok is from Nome and serves as director of UAF's Northwest Campus. She earned a master's in educational leadership from UAA and a doctoral degree in Indigenous Studies through UAF. Dr. Amarok worked for the Nome Public Schools for 20 years and has served on the Nome School Board since 2010. Dr. Amarok has served on the Sitnasak Native Corporation Board of Directors since 2011 and as the board chair for the past 3 years. So welcome, Barb. And then to her left, we have Dr. Herb Schroeder. He started the Alaska Native Science and Engineering Program, otherwise known as ANSEP, in 1995 with a single Alaska Native student. Dr. Schroeder has received many honors, including a Presidential Award for Excellence in Science, Mathematics, and Engineering Mentoring in 2004, the Alaska Federation of Natives Denali Award in 2005, and the George Norland Award from the University of Colorado Boulder in 2018. In 2009, the National Action Council for Minorities in Engineering honored him with the Reginald H. Jones Distinguished Service Award, which recognizes individuals whose efforts and accomplishments have resulted in increased underrepresented minority participation in the engineering workforce. In 2021, he was awarded the Friends of First Alaskans Ted Stevens Award by First Alaskans Institute. Thank you, Dr. Schroeder. And then lastly, we have Jolene Nanouk. Jolene is currently a graduate student studying rural development at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and her graduate research is on the topic of ANSEP. So I want to welcome all of them to this panel. So before we get started, I wanted to just talk a little bit about, why this panel and kind of some of the current developments that are going on at the University of Alaska when it comes to Alaska Native and Indigenous programs. A number of years ago, the Alaska Native faculty and staff across the 3 different universities came together to form the Alaska Native Studies Council. And it was kind of an informal council that really started to mobilize and catalyze conversations across faculty and staff of the 3 universities. And as they started to come together, they started to identify, areas where the university could really improve in terms of Alaska Native success. And they advocated very heavily at multiple levels. They held conferences and brought those staff and faculty and students together and just started to create more critical dialogue around issues in our communities, but also issues within the university system. And so they advocated pretty hard for some increased changes at the university. And that message was heard by the Board of Regents. And then in January of last year, President Pitney, who's our current president of the UA system, responded with what's called the Alaska Native Success Initiative. And you heard Chancellor White talk a little bit about this morning. What I wanted to share, hopefully that's not an emergency. Oh, there we go. It was just feedback. So the Alaska Native Success Initiative kicked off. It's called ANSI. And And so that started at the beginning of last year. And the important thing to think about with ANSI is it was really a call to action to develop a 5-year strategic plan that would inform the university's investments and direction when it came to increasing Alaska Native success. And by success, we're not just talking about students, we're talking about faculty, staff, programs, and all of those things. So ANSI kicked off last year, and we've seen a lot of really important developments since then, and there will be more to come. What I wanted to share about ANSI at UAF in particular is that 20% of our student body at UAF is Alaska Native and American Indian. 5.4% of our faculty self-identify as Alaska Native or American Indian, and 10% of our staff do. So across each of the universities, we have a goal, a collective goal at getting to a workforce that's 20% Alaska Native and American Indian, and each one of us kind of has room to grow in that. So the university is increasing its focus area around our programs, and so it's really a good time to look at some of the programs and some of the people that we have in place that have been working towards this end for a very long time, way prior to ANSI, way prior to any of these initiatives. And so I wanted to just kind of frame the panel a bit in that way, and would like to actually ask each of the panelists to kind of give us a little bit more information about their program or their respective campus, their respective graduate program. Maybe Jolene can talk about, just to give you a little bit of a sense of the context and the lens with which they come to the university and work with our students, our staff, faculty, and programs. So with that, I'll ask Dr. Lind, if you wouldn't mind starting us off.
Thank you. They didn't make these chairs for short Aleut women. I just want to thank you all for being here, and it's a pleasure being before you all. What got me involved at UAA? Well, I've always been interested in education. I ran our nonprofit education foundation for 5 years. I got really involved with the students, really pushing them. When you run a foundation like that, you're not just an executive director, you're a mom, you're a cheerleader, you're all of the above, fighting for every single student. And I loved the work. And I got my master's at UAA, and this is something I always preach to my students about. I always stayed in contact with my professors. And when an opportunity came up, they wanted to create something in the area of the Alaska Native Corporation. And every paper I wrote in my master's program focused on Alaska Native corporations, and they couldn't shake that. And they brought me to UAA, and all they told me was create something. We don't know what. And oh, by the way, you have to get your PhD at the same time. And I didn't know what I was agreeing to, if I'm being totally honest. And I kind of just jumped in. It was sink or swim. And working with some wonderful people, Professor George Gaystouts, who's no longer with us, then Dean Bear Baker, we came up with the Alaska Native Business Management minor. And some of the things we do there, we make students actually read ANSEP. They actually have to go through ANSEP paragraph by paragraph. And that sounds kind of dry, but it's not, because we go through everything along the way. It's fun. I was just talking to one of my students who took one of my classes just a minute ago, and it's fun getting their perspective on these courses. We're now getting ready to launch a certificate program. Boy, that noise is really loud, sorry. We're now getting ready to launch a certificate program. I was away from UAA for 2 years. I'm back, and I'm reinvigorating the program. And I think that reinvigoration will come through a certificate program, because you won't have to be in a degreed program to get the certificate. So we're hitting the ground running and going for it. And I'm really enjoying it. So thanks for having me. What was the question?
Just to talk a little bit about how you got into this work and maybe your campus, just how you fit in. Yeah.
Sure. I actually always knew that I would be in the field of education. Our father was a Bureau of Indian Affairs teacher and administrator. Our mother was a fluent speaker of Inupiaq, and she made our clothing, she sewed our parkas, she made our gumuks, and they both emphasized greatly education. And most of my work has been in K-12. I was a classroom teacher, I was an assistant principal, I was the Native Programs Coordinator, but most of the time there, it's K-12 is so regulated. Teachers have to show such fidelity to adopted curriculum that comes from usually from California, New York, and Texas. And I felt like I wasn't really helping build up each child to be the best that he or she could be according to the local family definition of leadership. So I've now been with Northwest Campus in Nome for almost 3 years, and it's a good thing. I think it's my dream place because I'm getting really old now, and I don't think I could go on to anything else, but it's with Dr. Stern's support and the support of all the other directors and Dean Uher and everyone else here at UA Fairbanks. It's a place where regional and local priorities can be addressed. So I'm loving it.
Thank you for having me here today. In the early 90s, I was doing research on rural sanitation here in Alaska. And we all know the problems with rural sanitation. You end up with real high infant mortality rates when you have bad sanitation, endemic enteric diseases, skin diseases, and on and on. And I worked on this project for 2 years. And while working on it, I never met a Native engineer. and one of the things we recognized that there was a very problematic communication style set up between the public health service engineers who were from outside the state and non-native, and the natives that were living in the community. So I was a engineering professor in Anchorage at the time, and I said, well, heck, I'll just make some native engineers. And that's how ANSEP started. Now, ANSEP students can go from 8th grade to a baccalaureate degree in 5 years. So they start in 8th grade, they come in to our campus, start taking university courses from university faculty in 9th grade, and 5 years later have a Bachelor of Science degree. And our program's evolved since 1995 with the help of a lot of partners. Some of them are here today. Anthony Malott from Sea Alaska has been a strong advocate and a supporter of the work we do, and Aaron Schutt from Doyon. But we start with kids as early as kindergarten and work with them early and get them inspired so that they want to learn and they understand the possibilities for their lives. And we continue with them every single year, all the way through the PhD if they want. We have 2 Alaska Native faculty in our College of Engineering who've come all the way through our program. We send them outside to get PhDs and then negotiated an agreement with the campus that they would be hired in tenure track positions when they graduate or when they earn their PhDs and came back. And both of them are tenured on our campus now. So thousands of students involved in this from 100 different communities across Alaska. Just this year alone, we have 900 kids who are in 8th grade who are going to be ready for Acceleration Academy in the fall. One of the great things about Acceleration Academy is it saves families 3 years of college expenses because it's all paid for. Using University of Alaska Anchorage cost of attendance, that's about $75,000. The other thing that's really significant is that if you sit and figure out the cost of a degree at our university, from starting the cost clock for government in 9th grade. So this is the cost for government starting in 9th grade To have a student come out the end of the pipeline with a university degree, it's about $288,000. When you do it the way ANSEP does it, it's less than 90. So we get those degrees for a third of the cost of the current situation. And we want to make this model available for every kid in every village, every place across the state. And then we're going to do it for the whole country. Yeah, you laugh now.
Thank you, Herb. All right, Jolene, maybe you could talk a little bit about how you came into the university system, what drew you in, and your journey to being a graduate student at UAF.
Sure. Nayanga gibsi, wangatiga mayugagalu, sagraminlu, ungalaklig bingurunga, anaga kungchuk, ungalaklig mungurok, akaga kungchuk, ungalaklig mungurok, anaga natikak. I welcome you. My name is Jolene Nanouk. I am from the people of Unalakleet. My mother was Teresa Nanouk, and she was from Unalakleet as well. And her mother was from Igavik, which is no longer a village or people living there. I started my college career out of high school, and life ended up happening, and I ended up with children, and decided to go back to get my degree because it was something I wanted to do to prove to my children that you could get a college degree living at home, working. And so I went back to college and graduated with my bachelor's in 2017, and then applied for my master's in rural development in 2019. The person that made an impact in my life while I was taking classes online was Professor Jenny Bell Jones, and she studied federal Indian law, ANSEP, tribal trust lands and subsistence, and international indigenous issues. But when I took her class, she was actually the one who inspired me that a project of opening enrollment for those like myself who were born after the ANSEP enactment to become shareholders was important. And I felt that it is still important, although 6 regional corporations have already opened enrollment, there are still the other regional corporations who have not, and the village corporations. And I feel that my project of opening enrollment for those who are disenfranchised and no connection to their land or being a part of the corporations that were made through ANSEP as my project, and just looking at the regional corporations that have opened enrollment and interviewing the process of how to do it or the wise practices they use to go about this process is what my project is on. So I appreciate this opportunity to be here. I'm humbled and I feel out of place, but I'm just as a student here voicing that there's great things happening in the state of Alaska through education and the issue of ANSEP.
Thank you so much, Jolene, and thank you for bringing that student voice to this panel. We appreciate it. So one of the first questions is, what are some of the most interesting and exciting programs happening in higher education right now for Alaska Native students? I'll just start with whoever would like to go first.
I'll mention a few things on our campus. I have to mention our new certificate programs in various Alaska Native languages at UAA. Our Alaska Native Studies Department has some remarkable instructors. I just took Unangam Tanu in a classroom at UAA. They do not remember the last time Unangam Tanu was offered at UAA. It's been that long. They are creating other certificate programs, Denina Athabaskan. They're working on other programs, but just going through that one class taught by Haley-Hannah Stepetin, it really opened my eyes. Wow, we could really reach our people in the classroom this way in our language revitalization efforts in a big way. Haley-Hannah taught that class on Zoom, and my brother took it from Florida. My niece took it from Chicago. And we worked together on our language projects. So that's really exciting to watch at UAA. I'm not going to mention my program again, but it's a pleasure to be back at UAA. The other thing I wanted to mention was the Alaska Native faculty working together with the Alaska Native Studies Council, because as these three campuses, Fairbanks, Juneau, and Anchorage, we're all so far apart, but we make our world smaller and together so that we can work together as Indigenous people and help each other. And that's who we are as a people. We're always helping each other. So it's just fun to translate that at the university in a variety of ways, because we're all stepping in and helping each other. So those are some exciting things going on at UAA besides my program, of course.
You should talk more. So Brian Uher told me not to apologize, but I'm going to apologize because I get nervous when I'm in front of an audience. So I wrote down, made sure to write down everything I wanted to share. So I will do some reading of what I wanted to share. So genuine multicultural education concerns the way that educators at every level are open to learning themselves and to worldviews that are different from their own, and their willingness to see the differences between authentic and commemorative chronicles and history. It's about continual attention and transformation of the organization toward efficacy. I'm very proud to say that there are many examples within our three universities, like Sharon was saying, of exciting programs and policies that specifically address Alaska Native priorities. The UA Fairbanks Strategic Plan for Inclusive Excellence includes in its vivid description the following descriptors: respect, diversity, inclusion, and caring are seen as everyone's responsibility and are incorporated into departmental missions. Policies and practices are regularly reviewed for implicit bias and accessibility through critical conversations about power and privilege and through formal assessment. A decolonized curriculum intentionally includes contributions of Black, Indigenous, and people of color, women, queer scholars, individuals with disabilities, and other marginalized and or underrepresented peoples. UA Fairbanks champions the application of decolonization principles and practices with local, state, and national partner organizations, including K-12. And Indigenous knowledge is used and valued in research, in the classroom, and throughout the university. Charlene mentioned ANSEP. The UA Fairbanks ANSEP priorities are expansion of Indigenous and rural student serving programs and places, recruitment and hiring of Indigenous staff, recruitment, retention, promotion, and tenure of Indigenous faculty, an increase in Indigenous visual representation, and for UA Fairbanks to be a leader in indigenization initiatives. At the Northwest Campus where I work in Nome, we partnered with Signasoc Native Corporation in Indigenous language revitalization and renormalization efforts. Thanks to Signasoc, we've been able to focus on this regional priority from the university perspective, and we are institutionalizing Indigenous teaching and learning. Waki, who's sitting back there, Waki Charles, my cousin. Director of the Alaska Native Language Center, is guiding our work. Northwest Campus and Sitnasauk Native Corporation have also partnered with the Bering Strait school districts to support teachers and principals where 85 to 95% of the students are Alaska Native. The aim is to increase student achievement by supporting educator skill, knowledge, and effectiveness through our Cultural Knowledge Campus Credential, which includes courses such as History of Schooling in Alaska, where the educators learn how colonization of Alaska's indigenous peoples has impacted all facets of our life, how colonization, and about historical and current traumas' effect on family systems and communities. Students become familiar with the concepts of acculturation, assimilation, stereotypes, racism, internalized oppression. And most recently, Northwest Campus has partnered with the Regional Bering Strait Native Corporation on a grant proposal to provide workforce development to support regional residents in being more qualified to apply for positions for projects, such as with the Port of Nome, with the Graphite One mine, and at Port Clarence. All of this is possible when university administration supports DEI and the priorities of Alaska Native communities, and when campuses and Native corporations come together to collaborate.
So one of the many things that we're working on is eliminating those institutional and systemic barriers that have prevented Alaska Native children access to a quality education, so that even in the villages, students have access to the coursework that they need so that they can come to the university and be successful when they get here. The track record hasn't been good, and I'm proud to be a part of being able to turn that around along with all the other ANSEP staff. This extends out into the workplace too, because as we started graduating students in conservation careers and health sciences and engineering, we found that there was those same systemic barriers in the workplace, and we're helping to break those down too, so that we have alumni working in just about every sector of Alaska's economy right now.
Thank you. Jolene, did you have anything you wanted to add for interesting, exciting programs happening in higher education for Alaska Native students?
I just wanted to mention that I appreciate the rural development program provided through DANSER, through UAF, in the classes that are taught, which inspire the work and studies that students like myself are interested in, and the connections you have with others in the workplace that were brought to class, such as in the one of my favorite classes was the Circumpolar Indigenous Leadership Symposium, that taught and encouraged me as a student on levels that I cannot describe, because they're just amazing personally, and in a way that you wanted to keep moving forward and not giving up on what you're doing. And the students who were there also in the past coming into class and having a panel like this with students available and speakers like you, Charlene, who are indigenous instructors that have doctorates and continue to teach and support students through DANSER, like Dr. Jessica Black and yourself. And so it's very inspiring, especially since you're also leaders within your own communities.
Thank you, Jolene. So I just want to piggyback on what Barb mentioned, that, you know, this partnership that Northwest Campus has with the school district and with the corporations. I got a chance to see the product of it firsthand when I went out to Nome at the invitation of Barb last year. And imagine all of these young teachers coming from other states. You know, this is their first time, many of them in Alaska. It's certainly their first time being in a rural Native community. Many of them probably hadn't ever experienced Native students or Native communities before. They come to Nome and they have a place within the partnership that she described to go to fish camp for a week and to participate in the seining of salmon and to learn from local knowledge experts, and also to have really critical conversations around some of the things she mentioned, like the history of schooling and all those other things. And it really helps to increase their awareness so that they can become better educators, more culturally relevant and informed educators. And I just wanted to really acknowledge the effort because it's been going for the past 10 years. And every student that any one of those educators has come into contact with has benefited as a result of that partnership. So thank you, Barb, and thank you to the Northwest Campus for that service to the community for so many years. So if we move to the next question is, are there any areas of research or data gaps that you think would help academic institutions and policymakers leading decisions for our state in meaningful ways? Is there anything that could help to improve that by investing in research or data gaps that currently exist?
I'll start that one. Go ahead. There's so many.
So there's a saying that I've been quoting for a couple years now, all the time. I don't even know who said it, but I repeat it. It's organizations are perfectly designed to get the results they are getting. So I know that we know that elementary, secondary, and post-secondary Alaska Native students have never achieved or completed at rates that we are capable of. If we hold the premise that Alaska Native students are not deficient, we must acknowledge that our systems must transform to be more effective for everybody. When achievement is not what it should be, the system, the delivery, and the content are what need fixing, not the students. Our educational systems are based on historical needs. Today's needs are different. As Wayne Au has written, we need to address social justice and recognize that systemic racism, colonization, and cultural oppression can be and have been sustained through schooling. The needs of Alaska Native students are not unique. They are the same as those of other students. Affirmation, respect, representation, inclusion, and the opportunity to be met where we're at. What is unique is that our needs have not been met. We have a need today for education at all levels that is grounded in the lives of students, teaches through dialogue, critiques school knowledge, supports students in engaging in real social and political issues, and explores how institutions contribute to inequality and inequity. If we had more research and data on paper supporting this, educational institutions might be more willing to transform.
I have nothing to add.
Okay, actually, that was quite perfect.
You could just go ahead and mic drop now. You said it all.
I knew she would answer that well.
Jolene, anything you want to add?
I just wanted to, on her note and what I had written on that topic, just doing research through UAF, I took a policy class, and it, one research that I did was on blood quantum and the hunting marine mammals, and the issue of being a quarter Alaska Native in order to hunt and our sea mammals, and just thinking about how our blood is diluting, and there's no scientific way that we could gain more Alaska Native blood, and how that policy of being put in place is going to become an issue. And just piggybacking on what's being taught in school. Yesterday, I had brought a seal to class to teach kids how to take the blubber off the skin. And I didn't talk about how you have to be a quarter Alaskan Native because of a policy that's written, but that it's a part of who we are, and we need to this issue of that's in place as a policy and in regards to educating our future is needs to be resolved, because that is our future. The people are descendants, and it should eventually become just in my eyes that you should have proof of lineal descent other than proving that you're a quarter Alaskan Native to subsist marine mammals.
Thank you. Thank you, Jolene. Anyone else want to comment on that? Okay. All right. So the next question is, how do academic institutions critically review curriculum and campus environments to include multiculturalism, incorporating Alaska Native and Indigenous knowledge and points of view?
It's interesting. We were just talking about that at our department level. You know, for accreditation, you want to showcase inclusiveness and diversity. And I think it's happening in a variety of ways, and we're not always documenting all the variety of ways that it is happening. But I think it is so much more than just Alaska Native. One of the things that we like to do, and when I say we, I don't just mean the Alaska Native Studies Council, but I work very closely with Alaska Native Studies and Native Student Services. And I think from an Alaska Native perspective, having a holistic approach to meeting the needs of our students is critical to their success. And that holistic approach includes, you know, being close to Native Student Services at UAA and being in touch with them and working closely with Alaska Native Student Services. And we have a program in our dorm for Alaska Native Student Services, but having these silos and this separateness actually hurts the students. So I think UAF is a great example of bringing those services together under one roof. And I think it makes a difference for the students. I think UAA, just by our very design, creates those silos, and that's unfortunate. It's something that we talk about a lot. But it's something we could definitely do better and work better plans on, for sure.
Thank you. Barb?
Thank you. Thank you. This was reviewing curriculum, right? But first I wanted to respond to what Jolene shared about blood quantum. I remember that Gordon Puller was doing research on the effects of blood quantum policy. I didn't read his work, but you bringing that up, Jolene, makes me think back on that. But Mariah Morgan and I were over in Finland in September to look at the Sami Education Institute Reindeer Industry Program, because Northwest Campus has the High Latitude Range Management Program, which focuses on reindeer industry, meat production, value added, ungulate science, all those things. And Jackie Rabak is from Canada, but she teaches at the Sami Education Institute, and she also teaches for Northwest Campus. and we stayed at her house, and I was reading one of the papers that she had written, and it was about about how the Finnish government describe or has as its regulation for determination of Sami identification, whether or not at least one of your parents or grandparents is a fluent speaker of Sami. And the Sami people, they don't look like me. They look blondish and very fair. And it just was shocking to me. So I was talking to Mariah about it, how in the United States, whether or not you are Native American, Alaska Native, depends on your blood, but in Finland, it depends on your language. Ours, because we still have a strong amount of blood in the older generations, and in Finland, they are maintaining their language. So, but I guess my point is that I think what maybe universities, definitely corporations and tribes can work together to determine what that rule should be about. I should be the one who self-identifies. It shouldn't be a governmental agency that identifies who I am. So to the question about reviewing curriculum and environment to include multiculturalism and incorporating Alaska Native and Indigenous knowledge and points of view. Every educational institution in Alaska should be a place where identities, languages, and life ways of Alaska Native students are strongly present. Students today should not have to leave those at the door of the school like I did. This foundation starts with educators and administrators being appropriately schooled themselves in what multicultural education entails, and also authentic history, anti-racism, equity, and inclusion. In the book, Alaska Native Land Claims by Bob Arnold, he quotes Hubert Howe Bancroft about the Treaty of Cession. Bancroft stated, "Thus, without further ceremony, this vast area of land belonging by right to neither was transferred from one European race to the offshoot of another." Even today, this is not the lesson learned by students in Alaska. Multicultural education does not mean providing a 30-minute bilingual class once a week or having an Indigenous activities week once a year. These activities in themselves send the message that our identities, knowledge, ways, and languages are not important enough to be foundational and represented in and through every classroom. The truth is, and I see it, that at all levels, we continue to have educators focusing on blaming students and having lesser expectations of some students as if we are disposable, without looking at institutional privilege and the historical perspective for Alaska Native students, families, and communities. My grandfather, Amarok, was from Big Diomede. His name was changed to Amarok, and he was given the name Joseph. My grandmother, Mayak, was from Ukivak, or King Island, and my mother, Iliachlak, was born and raised in Nome, attended the segregated elementary school, and graduated from the integrated high school at the age of 20. When she was a teenager, Amarok and Mayak took her, my aunt, and my uncle to the Dream Theater. There were sections for whites, for full-bloods, and for half-bloods. The only section that had 5 seats together was in the white section, so my grandfather seated our family there. The usher came and told Amarok that he had to move the family. The telling of history, in order for there to be understanding and for social justice work to be promoted, needs to be candid and truthful. Giroux, I have a quote from Giroux. Critical pedagogy is defined as an educational movement guided by passion and principle to help develop consciousness of freedom, recognize authoritarian tendencies, and connect this knowledge as a foundation for taking constructive action. The 3 institutions of the UA system are taking these steps. UA goal number 5 is to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in students, faculty, and staff. As stated in the Commitment to Transformation Statement of the UA ANSEP, it is the intention of the system to identify barriers and opportunities to improve the recruitment, retention, and success for Indigenous students, faculty, and staff. UA Fairbanks goal number 4 is to establish global leadership in Alaska Native and Indigenous programs. UA Fairbanks ANSI Priority 5 is for the university to become a leader in indigenization initiatives. The work is ongoing, and what is most important is the acknowledgement of the need for the work.
So weaving multiculturalism into the curriculum is definitely something that's very important. You have to recognize what a challenge this is going to be within a university system. Every single word in those course descriptions that we all read in catalogs when we went to college is reviewed by committees of people, and I've sat in those committees, and they'll get in an argument about whether something should be a period or a comma, and it'll go for 15 minutes. And so when you start talking about a dramatic change like this panel's proposing, and we all know is necessary, it's a formidable challenge for it to happen. And it's only going to happen when the people that are at the top of the institutions demand it. You can't just have a list of goals and not have it backed up with some horsepower from the management of the institution.
Thank you, Herb. Jolene, you have anything you want to add?
Sure. So through the Downsword program and taking classes through UAF, there's opportunities for students like myself to partake in incorporating our Indigenous knowledge and points of view through classes like the ANS 458 class, which is Politics of Indigenous Identity, RD 350, which was Community Research on Indigenous Contexts, and leadership classes like Alaska Native Studies 425, Federal Indian Law and Alaska Natives, and then Alaska Native Claim Settlement Act. And another class was Political Economy of the Circumpolar North. But there's so many classes that are available that have opened, the eyes of students, for students like myself. And I really appreciated what Doyon has done and shared with their website on their knowledge of elders and the videos that are provided. And I remember watching some of the videos and thinking, this is so amazing, so much history that is spoken and shared. So I was able to share that because I teach bilingual biculture in Nanouk schools, and I was able to share those videos with students as not, even though I was showing them through college classes, I was able to share them with middle school and high school students, and they were able to learn history and, just plain spoken truth about what happened growing up and how it is up until today. So I appreciate that knowledge shared.
Thank you. So I wanted to add, as a result of some of this increased attention with Alaska Native and Indigenous studies within the UA system, we did have a major victory last year in the appointment of Dr. Pearl Brower of Utqiagvik in a very, very important seat within the UA statewide system. She advises directly the president and is somebody that we all can work with and look towards to really help us to make these kinds of changes and to turn over those rocks. And so I want to acknowledge Pearl, because even in the short time she's been here, she's made a huge impact. And so I think we are incrementally making some good changes. The other one I wanted to point out is a number of years ago, the Alaska Native Studies Council, like Sharon and I both been talking about, they basically challenged the university so that every degree seeking student from the UA system, regardless of where they live and where they're taking classes from, has to take an Alaska Native themed requirement class. And that was such a huge, I mean, you know, what Herb was talking about is, and like any kind of big complex system, these small changes take a lot of time and a lot of effort. But that one alone ensures that at least, you know, these students that are coming to UA are getting some exposure to our communities, our culture, our languages. They have a vast range of classes that they can choose from. And so I think that that's another really important thing. But I did want to, just before we get to the next question, I want to say what I appreciate a lot about especially Herb and the ANSEP program is that, you know, this mentality or perception that's out there for our students that they're underprepared, it's like pathologizing them, it's blaming them for coming to our doors and needing, you know, extra services. And so the answer is always, you know, they need tutoring, they need remedial classes, whatever. But which is true in some cases, and that's fine. But I think what ANSEP has really done is tried to challenge that narrative to say we have programs of excellence, right? And our students can rise to those expectations if they have this supportive environment and this belief in their ability to do that. And I want to just highlight one other program while I have a chance. Here at UAF, we have the College of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences that produces a lot of graduate students who ultimately become fish biologists and fish and game managers. And we have a number of faculty in this room, including Dr. Jessica Black and Dr. Carrie Stevens and others, Dr. Courtney Crothers, Dr. Peter Wesley, Sonia Barra. There are a lot of people who have been working on these issues intently to try to increase the number of Alaska Native and Indigenous students in the College of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences so that they can take that education and use it to the betterment of our people. And in the last, so this is a 5-year funded project through the National Science Foundation called DMUMTA. In the very first year, 9 all indigenous cohort of students came through CFOS into the graduate program. And I want to recognize Nick as being one of them. He introduced himself earlier, but you know, how cool is that? And then another batch were just admitted through that program. And so part of what those opportunities do is it not only creates that cohort environment for the students to go through a graduate program together, but it literally changes the university with it, right? They can't then help but not incorporate Indigenous knowledge into their curriculum. And just want to thank all of the PIs that I mentioned, Jessica and Courtney and Peter, especially for their hard work on that DMUMTA project, because the more graduate programs that we can support that replicate what DMUMTA is doing, the better. So just want to hold them up because that's pretty amazing work. So with that, I want to go ahead and move to the last question before we open it up for those in the room and online. The last question is, as we look forward to the next 50 years of ANSEP, what are some areas of focus and growth that you would like to see on our campuses and in our communities?
I was just having a conversation with Sarah Lukeen after she finished. One of the things I love to do is dream big. And, you know, when I started in Alaska Native Business Management, there was no really management book called ANSEP 101 that I could pull off the shelf and go through with my students and show them, you know, like organizational behavior management in an Alaska Native corporation. I really like what Sarah said about the Alaska Native Corporation, because I really think the word corporation is problematic. It's actually a contradiction in terms. We are Indigenous organizations. Our leadership is Indigenous. And one of the things I love about dreaming big is involving the leadership of the ANCs in my particular program, because that also helps me address need. What do you see lacking when that student comes in your door, and what do they need? Where are they ill prepared? So again, taking this holistic approach and including everyone in the process, but also the willingness of our leadership in our Alaska Native community to step up and mentor this next generation is just phenomenal. I look in this room and I've had several of you in the classroom helping the next generation. What would I like to see? For me and my particular program, we are working on efforts that go beyond academics, that work with Alaska Native corporations. One of the fun things we did in one of my classes, we called Inside the Boardroom. I'm looking at Wally Carlo right now. We brought the regional chairs into the classroom every year. And it was really remarkable watching students work with these chairs. I have to be honest, when they first started working with the chairs in the morning, they were literally shaking in their shoes. Having this caliber of VIP in the room was frightening for them. But then by the afternoon, it was a different tune they were singing, and they really enjoyed it. And that type of involvement in a program, you don't normally see that in the corporate world. It's different. And the students always say that it's different in the Alaska Native corporate world. And so dreaming big on that front, one of the things the chairs realized when they got together, they realized we were making history. And so of course we took lots of pictures, but now we're taking it a step further. We're meeting with the chairs outside of the classroom, and the chairs and the vice chairs are convening at the College of Business and Public Policy at UAA. And we want to explore taking this further. What can we do as a university to work together to help each other so that my students are prepared when they get to your level? And again, the willingness of these leaders to step up and help is just remarkable. I realized very early on, all I had to do was ask. And I've done a lot of asking, and I realized that. I try not to wear people out. Aaron, I hope you don't mind me saying, Aaron will say, Sharon, if I have to say no, I will say no. And that's okay. But that is helping the students realize what they want to accomplish. And the management degree is the most popular degree for Alaska Native students at UAA. It's a very popular degree, and supplementing that with a minor in Alaska Native business management makes sense. I mean, these students are genuinely interested of what is going on in their corporation. I remember at one of the chairman's meetings, the students had to present to the chairs, and I told them I was going to rip them out after 8 minutes, literally. And we literally ripped them out after 8 minutes. I said, this is real world inside the boardroom. And one of my student groups got up and they demanded that every regional corporation open enrollment. And that was their presentation to all of the chairs. And, you know, my message to students is dream big and present to our leadership what you really want. And the willingness for these leaders to sit and listen and hear the next generation, it's just remarkable to watch as these young people grow into the leaders that they are becoming. So I probably got way off track there, but I hope that answers.
Thank you, Sharon. Barb?
ANSEP is complex, and through the implementation of the law, questions and issues have naturally risen. Foundationally, the establishment of for-profit corporations forced Alaska Native people to conform to an individualistic way of thinking, emphasizing singular and corporate gain over relationship and benefit for community. Alaska Native communities have had effective systems of education, health, and justice for at least 14,000 years and have had to adapt to complete change during the last 250 years. Today, many Native corporations have done well, and some have not. Many have incorporated our original principles of life, and to our individual and collective harm. Others have moved to the extreme opposite. We need strong programs that prepare leaders for our corporation boards and administrative positions. So thank you, Sharon. We need leaders who will meet corporate goals in the areas of land stewardship, financial performance, operations excellence, and shareholder benefit. And most importantly, we need leaders who live and work abiding by our traditional values and principles of life. The UA Fairbanks Tribal Governance Program provides effective and valuable education that supports Alaska Native tribal leadership. The same can be done in the area of for-profit Native corporations. We need to institutionalize Indigenous pedagogy, not just in content, but also relating to methodology. Effective educators critically analyze and actively resist decolonization. Indigenous teaching and learning is holistic and not compartmentalized. It serves the community and it responds to local priorities. Each of our campuses should be a place where students of all ages see our identities, languages, and lifeways strongly present, respected, and foundationally incorporated. And as a result, students will be prepared to take active roles as leaders addressing self-determination, including through our Native corporations.
So I want to see a world where every single student in Alaska has access to an excellent education and a life of unlimited possibilities. And we can get there together.
Thank you. Jolene?
Yes. So the project I'm working on for my graduate program is based on ANSEP, and the stipulation you're required to be born on or before December 18, 1971, and being a quarter Alaska Native in order to enroll as shareholders. And within the Alaska Native corporations. And although there's 6 regional corporations that have open enrollment, and the issue is those that have not opened enrollment yet, and the thousands of descendants of shareholders who are not enrolled as shareholders, and the 2 to 3 generations of people, it includes 2 to 3, maybe 4 generations of people that are not enrolled within the ANSEP corporations. But within the next 50 years, I would anticipate areas of growth in communities and regions that have yet to open enrollment to these new natives who are disenfranchised from their role as land bearers, shareholders of their village and regional corporations, and ones whom will be impacted on issues of development on their lands or whether or not their ANC will succeed. The issue of allowing equality amongst everyone, including those who do not fulfill the 1/4 Alaska Native stipulation because they're born without say of who their parents should have been with, should be considered because we all come from the same ancestors, live on the same lands that were fought for through ANSEP, and should be included, much like Chalista had provided, using lineal descent instead of blood quantum. But I see that within the next 50 years, educating the current and future generations on being shareholders, advertising what it means to be a shareholder and the connection we have to our lands as individual Alaska Native corporations should be an important part of what is being taught, not just in the school, but on a community and regional corporate level. We have the future of these Alaska Native corporations and concern regarding what type of level each ANCA is engaged with in communicating with their people or their shareholders. whether or not they are being transparent, educating what is happening with their corporations, entailing what it means to be a shareholder, holding meetings or providing newsletters, blogs, posting videos, which is really good to connect with everyone, and the importance of what it means to run a corporation and the purpose of why ANSEP was passed. Our right to own our land and be in charge of what can and cannot happen on it. And it is the biggest asset to us as Alaska Native people, to own the land and to be able to connect to that land, because it is who we are. It doesn't matter whether or not you're 51 or 7 or 72, we all have that right to be shareholders. So I feel that within the next 50 years, I could see that everyone would be included and understand the roles that it has for the development of our corporations. Thank you.
Thank you, Jolene. All right, we got 2 questions submitted from the floor and online. The first question is kind of a comment, but I would ask for any feedback that you all may have. So it reads, "Thank you for your great panel. It's really hard to stomach needing to pay money to learn our Indigenous languages, which were violently taken from us. Can you please share thoughts on making language learning available to all Indigenous families who are interested in learning? Sounds like some amazing new programs are becoming available." And maybe before I turn it over, I just want to say this is an area that was identified within the ANSEP initiative, is to charge a number of us to look at opportunities to make language learning free to those that want to learn their language. So it has been identified and we're still strategizing, but I'd like for any feedback you all have.
So this is something that I've been working with Alaska Native Studies on. Is this on? At UAA. I know our provost at UAA is working toward in-state tuition for all language classes, Indigenous language classes. I know my brother and my niece had to pay out-of-state tuition, but in concert with that, the Aleut Foundation, and this is something I want to bring up with the regional chairs, the Aleut Foundation, I don't know, Lisa, maybe you can answer this, is talking about paying the full cost for Aleuts or Unangan wanting to take the Aleut language or the Unangan language. Haley Hanna would not be happy me saying Aleut, so Unangan. The Unangan language. So I know that is something that many are concerned with, and believe me when I tell you it's something that we bring up all the way up to the provost at UAA. And it's something that I hope foundations could collaborate with us on in paying the way of your students to take their Indigenous language, because I really think this is the path to the rebirth of our language, of our people.
Thank you. Any other panelists? Barb, you want to comment on that?
I think the University of Alaska has something called MOOT, which is free language courses. I don't know anything about it. I just heard it. But up in our region, a couple of years ago, Sicknasauk Native Corporation donated a hefty amount of funding to the Northwest Campus for anybody in our region taking any of our Indigenous language courses or workshops, because if the intent is to renormalize conversation in languages, even if at an elementary level, then nobody should be excluded. So that funding, we're still using it to provide tuition for anybody taking Inupiaq, Yupik, St. Lawrence Island Yupik courses through our campus. Sicknasauk Native Corporation recently provided another donation to support our our project where we have what we call master teachers of Indigenous language that teach at our campus. We have Suzuk, Sigvana, Tatok. There are other master level teachers in our region also, Anangalutak, Yayuk, Kiminak, and others. But we have a small group of master teachers who are developing courses to train up and coming adjunct faculty of Indigenous language. And of course, we're not requiring that the apprentices be speakers, because that's the issue that we need to support and provide ways for people to learn, people to teach, and for the speaking to come back. So quite a few of the apprentice teachers that we will work with are, well, they all make a commitment that they will take courses for the 5 years to become adjunct faculty of Indigenous language. And the ones from the regional village communities are they're called the bilingual teachers in the Bering Strait School District schools, and they are already teaching in K-12. And the other group that we are working with the staff of are the Head Start teachers. So they are already acting as teachers of children. So we will hope to build up their skills to incorporate speaking and written language into what they do.
Thank you.
Jolene, did you want to add anything on that question?
I felt that the question is really good, and my first my first thought was the apps that you could put on your phone to learn a language. Inupiaq or Yupik, it's really resourceful what's being put out. Just the other day, I had a parent come and show me a book written in Yupik, and it was spoken on the app as they're reading the book, because he was allowing the app was reading the book to his child, but it was highlighting the words in Yupik as it flipped the pages. And I thought that was really cool. So there's a lot of resources out there. You just have to look for them. And I appreciate what Northwest Campus is doing for their bilingual, for the region of Bering Straits. I know a lot that in the North Slope, they have an amazing programs available that you could take or sign into to learn Inupiaq as well. But although that's a different dialect, it's still Inupiaq. But there's resources out there, and there's so much more that could be made if the people are able to. So that was just my thought.
Thank you. I'll just add, UAF has the Alaska Native Language Center, which was formed by the legislature in the 1970s. It is a one-of-a-kind institute that exists internationally. There's no other institute and center like it. And we do have a number of faculty that focus on teaching the language. We have UAF is the only university that has a bachelor's degree in Yupik and a bachelor's degree in Inupiaq. What we don't have is a pathway for other languages at the moment to get the similar credit. And so we're going to be looking at that, because we have now 2 Gwich'in faculty that teach Gwich'in. We want to expand into Siberian Yupik as well as Danaka, which is the language of the interior. We do have some unique partnerships that support the work that ANLC does, and I want to highlight Doyon Foundation does a lot in language revitalization and has reached out in multiple ways to partner, which is really exciting for us. Tana Chiefs Conference, which is our regional tribal nonprofit here, they also have funding that is government funded for language learning, and so they've actually half-time funded a position here at UAF for somebody to work as a collections manager for the Alaska Native Language Archive. And so our staff work in conjunction with their language revitalization program. So I think there's going to be a lot more that happens with our languages as far as the university goes in the next few years. And I'm really excited to see what all happens, because it's much needed. Our students come here to learn their home languages, and we want to honor that. So we have about another 10 more minutes-ish. And my goal was to get you all out of here a little bit early so that you can make your way down to Doyon. We have a reception, which Tia will talk a little bit about. So this next question is actually for you, Herb. Is ANSEP an established UA program? What makes it an established university program recognized by the university? If we could have you respond to that question. Is ANSEP an established UA program? What makes it an established university program recognized by the university? I think the question is about the affiliation between ANSEP and the university. Can you pass, Sharon, can you pass the mic down? Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, it's been established since 1995 when we started it. And I guess the university contributes money to the program along with 70 different partner organizations. And so, yes, it's a university program. And we work on every campus, every main campus.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead,
And can I add something about something else? So we were talking about blood quantum earlier, and Anthony a lot just forwarded me. See Alaska has a Native Enough initiative happening out of See Alaska, and they've sent a survey out to their shareholders about blood quantum and how it affects their lives. So thank you, Anthony.
Wow, cool.
Thank you. Do you want to come? No. Okay, so the last question, and then we'll ask for closing comments after this one, is what are ways this partnership that we're here to talk about between Alaska Native organizations, corporations, and the university will help us face climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic? So,
I think Indigenous people in our relationship with the land has a better care of the land than many. And that I was fortunate enough to get my PhD here at UAF. And that was the first time I had Indigenous instructors in my entire life. And it opened my eyes on Indigenous research and connection to the land in a way that, quite honestly, I never fully comprehended or appreciated. It wasn't until I had instructors like Beth Leonard, Teresa John, Gordon Puller, who really mentored me, taught me, and really showed me the balance among Indigenous people in a way that I had not experienced before. And I don't know where I'm going with this. I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. I will say, with regards to COVID, our students are struggling. Our students are struggling, and they need our help. They need your help. I work with students today who have contacted me about depression, about a number of different things, including substance abuse. This isolation that students experienced in the 2 years of COVID has really been detrimental to their mental health, and they really need our help. And I always encourage people, if you know any student who is seeking a higher education, reach out to them. I mean, send them a Starbucks card, do something, send them a note that you're thinking about them, because in their isolated world of COVID, that becomes their world. This Zoom world is not an effective teaching model. Losing that face-to-face experience has been really difficult for our Indigenous students, because we're a collectivist society. We rely on each other. So this is creating separateness and silos. And so I just want to encourage everyone, reach out to students and give them that little boost they need. And it could be something really small. It doesn't have to be some grandiose gesture. It could be a note from you to them. It could be sending them, something, a little gift card, whatever it is. As instructors, we're on the receiving end of that. And so, of course, we're fighting for every student, but they need more than us in that fight. So I just want to encourage you, if you know a student, reach out to them, because they need you now more than ever.
So Indigenous knowledge is academic and longitudinal. Researchers need to work, and they are today more and more. I mean, I remember a time, it just seems like it was a few years ago, when these research reports were coming out. There was a research report that came out about the Calvic Barrow. It was horrible. I remember that. It was all over the state. People had gone up there and supposedly done some research and put out this scathing report about the community up there. But researchers need to work with and be guided by Indigenous knowledge when it comes to climate change. University faculty can benefit. They can benefit students with what they teach by partnering with Indigenous knowledge holders. NOAA just put out a report and a video series that incorporates knowledge of elders they interviewed at Northwest Campus 2 years ago. And as far as COVID, in our region, Norton Sound Health Corporation, the regional health provider, in March 2020, when we started being affected by COVID-19, Norton Sound Health Corporation immediately partnered with every tribe, all 16 of the tribes in our region, to host a weekly, and they're still doing it, a weekly teleconference of information and back and forth and partnership. I think makes a big difference if we're going to make sure that everybody's well and safe.
So one of the things that's really important reason that ANSEP's successful is that we organize all our students into teams, even starting with little kids. And when the COVID hammer hit in 2020, it was easy for our students to make the leap from working in teams on the campus to working in teams online. So that one of the things we do with university students in particular, and this includes all the Acceleration Academy high school students, is if there's a calculus class or an English class or whatever class, all of my students are all in the same class in the same section. And then those students have to get together during the week and go through all the course material in something that we call recitation, which is an organized study group that's led by another ANSEP student who's completed that class with a B or better. And so we move this with the help of, let me give a shout out to Janelle Sharp in the back here, who runs the Anchorage Acceleration Academy, that we made the leap and it was almost seamless. I was stunned at how well it happened. And we still have course completion rates up above 90%. And then the other person who did a great job with us is Yossi Storms from Unalakleet, who's here, and they're both ANSEP alumni. And she took and worked with middle school kids all over the state, designing online things that they could do together with their families in competitions. And my favorite one was she had kids all over the state building Rube Goldberg machines with their families and videotaping them and sending them in. And then she had prizes set up, and she even built computers remotely with kids all over the state. And this is something that we're going to carry after COVID, because it was I didn't realize that it could even be done. And it was the COVID challenge that really presented it to us. So starting in the fall, what we hope to do is, if you're sitting in Tuntatuliak or Barrow or someplace where we don't operate, you can get online and join the ANSEP community and be in class online with another whole group of ANSEP students and study with them and pass those courses that you need to be successful when you come to the university. It works. I was shocked. I didn't ever think you could do something like that. But Janelle and that Acceleration Academy team really showed us what was possible.
Thank you. Jolene?
Yes. So we are resilient people who have learned to adapt. My grandmother, who was from Igavik, her mother had to walk from another village. I had to ask my grandmother where she was from, and she didn't know where her mother was from, because during the last pandemic, her family had all passed away, and so she was a teenager and ended up walking to Igavik and having to settle there. In order to survive, she married my grandmother's father and adapted in that way during the last pandemic. And so examples like that, that we're resilient and we have learned to adapt to situations such as COVID, using Zoom, like I am using Zoom right now, or how you could do it for medical appointments, corporation, regional meetings, classes online, learning how to make a cusbuck through Zoom. You know, we've all adapted through this pandemic, and we're still resilient, even though it gets depressing and people are struggling with classes. I myself was supposed to graduate at the end of the month, but I've decided, because I didn't, I have control over my mentality, that I'm going to move my graduation to December and extend my defense till the fall. Just adapting to situations that we have no control over, and accepting what we have the choice to do. And so I believe just understanding we're resilient and that we could adapt. And I appreciate the question, because this has been climate change and COVID, it makes you appreciate more the little things in life, like the sun shining today or snow on the ground. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of our panelists. I've worked for the university system for almost a decade in a way, and I've realized just how often entrenched the university is in terms of its ways of doing things, and to make space within a system like that for our Indigenous peoples and our ways of knowing and our languages and all of those things. We stand on the shoulders of many who came before us and carved out those small spaces, and we have, I think, the privilege and also the responsibility to increase that pathway. And it's really because of people like these panelists and many others that are really fighting for that space, I think, that we all think is so critically important and our students will benefit from. So I just want to thank all of our panelists, and just would like to offer any last comments that any of you all may have that you want to put to the group. From the panel, yeah.
Okay. That 7 a.m. flight is kicking in now. Oh, and I still have to teach here in an hour. So it's a pleasure being here. I love sharing what we're doing. If you have any additional questions, please contact me. I am back at UAA. I took 2 years off from UAA, and I'm now working there under our new dean, John Knopfsinger, and really enjoying myself and having a creative building moment at UAA, and it's been really enjoyable. And I'm going to need your help. So if you get called on to be in front of my students, I hope you can join us, because from a classroom perspective, you can read on paper and learn textbook knowledge, but it's really putting people like you, leaders, in front of our students that really has an impact on their lives. And it also shows them what they're capable of with hard work. And it's so remarkable to see that happen to a student when they start realizing who they are and start building their future dream based on that foundational knowledge that they get in the classroom. It's really rewarding. And I think that's why most educators are in education, because that's what we fight for and that's what we do every day, and we love it. And so thanks for having me, and it's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I say what Sharon said. There are a lot of people in this room. There have been a lot of people in this room today that who have fought, who are fighting. And I think it's been mentioned throughout the day that we need to always remember and acknowledge the people who did the work before us. And thank you to the students who will pick it up and support, effective governance through corporations and tribes, and support the continuing of our life ways and our languages. So thank you to all of you, especially the students.
So thank you for having me today.
Thank you. Jolene, last word.
Yes, I'm completely humbled to be here. I appreciate the invite and the knowledge of the people here today. And I really appreciate ANSEP and what it's doing. My children have gone to it, and it's made an impact on who they are and the way that they work and the work that they do in school. So I appreciate Doyon for putting this up, and for all those that are here today that made it possible.
Thank you, Jolene, and thanks everybody. If you could just hold tight real quick, we have some gifts for everybody. I'm not going to chase anyone down like Tia had to do this morning. I'm in heels. Here you go, Herb. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. And Jolene, we'll get yours sent off to you. Thank you, Barb. Yep, and thank you, Sharon. Okay, let's give them a last round of applause, please. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, panelists. That was a really rich discussion. As a teacher working in education, I really appreciated listening to all of you. So this wraps up our agenda today, and I want to take a few moments to thank our ASL interpreters and transcribers for their work with us online today. Teresa, Margarita, and Lisa, we appreciate you. I would like to invite all of you to a reception this evening at the Doyon Plaza located downtown near the Cushman Street Bridge. The reception is scheduled to begin at 6 p.m. and will include heavy hors d'oeuvres and champagne. So we kindly ask that attendees bring an ID showing they are at least 21 years old. Please note that the reception will feature a number of fundraising activities to support the Future Trothgeta Indigenous Studies Center, which is UAF's #1 capital priority. Our team's contact information is on the back of your name tag if you have any questions about the reception. Tomorrow, we'll feature a keynote address by Anthony Malott, several more panels, and remarks by Senator Lisa Murkowski. We look forward to seeing you all here tomorrow at 9 a.m. Bye. Oh, thank you to all of our panelists and participants.